Have you ever wondered how people manage transportation in the coldest corners of the planet? Places where roads vanish beneath endless snowdrifts and temperatures drop so low they can freeze engine oil solid. In these brutal conditions, ordinary trucks don't survive. But humans have never been the type to give in to nature. Instead, engineers built machines unlike anything else, towering steel giants that look as if they rolled straight out of a science fiction movie. These trucks were created to crawl across glaciers, withstand raging blizzards, and deliver vital supplies to outposts most people could never imagine reaching. Some are massive and powerful enough to seem almost unreal, while others are rare prototypes that only a lucky few have ever seen in action. Yet every single one shares the same purpose: to master landscapes that would force any normal vehicle to stop within moments. Today, we'll explore the greatest off-road snow trucks ever engineered. A journey through decades of mechanical ingenuity, where human determination collided with impossible environments and won. Stick around until the very end, because the number one truck on this list will completely change how you think about moving across frozen worlds. TROM 20. In the 1970s, in the frozen city of Surgut, Russia, a machine was born that looked like it could stare down winter itself. The Trum 20 wasn't just another truck. It was designed for a world where snow piles higher than houses, where swamps thaw and freeze in an endless cycle, and where temperatures fall so low they can turn engine oil into ice. Regular vehicles stood no chance in such a place. But the Trum 20 was no ordinary machine. It was a giant created to challenge nature directly and win. Unlike most vehicles of its era, the Trum 20 didn't rely on tracks like a tank. Instead, it rolled on colossal low-pressure tires, each nearly as tall as a grown adult. These weren't just wheels, they were lifelines. They spread the truck's massive weight across the ground, giving it the uncanny ability to float over snow that would swallow other machines whole. In summer, when swamps turned into mud pits, those same tires carried it across as if it were gliding on soft earth. Where others got stuck, the Trum 20 kept going, steady and relentless. At its heart sat a V8 engine, an 8-liter powerhouse producing around 250 horsepower. That may not sound extreme compared to modern highway trucks, but in Siberia, brute strength mattered less than staying alive. The engine had a deep, steady growl, like a beast pacing in the cold, and it had enough muscle to pull pipelines, generators, and even mobile shelters across landscapes where no road had ever existed. The real trick, though, was its articulated chassis. The truck was literally built in two sections connected by a pivot, letting the front half steer the rear. It could twist and bend around obstacles, turning in spaces where most trucks needed a football field. Watching it maneuver was almost hypnotic, like a giant metal serpent gliding across the tundra. Picture it in action. An endless white plain stretches in every direction. The snow is so soft it looks ready to swallow everything. Then, slowly, the Trum 20 crawls into view. Its enormous tires press deep prints into the ground, but the cab stays perfectly balanced, as if riding on a cushion of air. The exhaust breathes out clouds that hang in the freezing wind. The hum of the V8 isn't frantic, it's steady, patient, determined. You can almost feel the message it sends: nothing will stop me. For the people of Siberia, this was more than a truck. It was survival. Oil and gas operations depended on it to transport pipes, drilling rigs, fuel, and food into areas that even helicopters struggled to reach. Without the Trum 20, much of the exploration in northern Russia would have been impossible. It was the difference between frozen isolation and the continuation of industry in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Workers relied on it not just to move cargo but to move hope itself. And here's the most remarkable part: many of these giants are still out there today. Decades after they were first built, some Trum 20s continue to roll across the Siberian tundra, doing exactly what they were born to do: defy the cold, conquer the mud, and keep pushing forward when everything else fails. They are living relics of an age when machines weren't built for style, but for survival. So, the next time you wonder how humans endure the impossible, remember this truck. The Trum 20 wasn't just a vehicle, it was a weapon against nature's fury, a reminder that even in the coldest, most unforgiving corners of the earth, we find a way to keep moving. And if you've been enjoying this journey through the greatest snow beasts in history, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, because the monsters we're about to reveal will make even the Trum 20 look tame. ZIL E-167. In the early 1960s, as the Soviet Union pushed deeper into the planet's frozen frontiers, a machine rolled out that looked less like a truck and more like something from a science fiction film. It was called the ZIL 167, and it was unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. At first glance, it didn't seem real, so massive, so overbuilt, so audacious, that it looked like it had been dreamed up by a child sketching the ultimate snow truck. But this was no dream. This was a prototype built with one mission: to dominate the Arctic. The heart of the ZIL E-167 was a monstrous 10.4-liter V8 engine pushing out around 300 horsepower. That may sound modest by today's standards, but in its time and in the conditions it faced, that power was extraordinary. Yet it wasn't the engine that turned heads. It was the wheels. 6 of them, each nearly 2 meters tall, dwarfing anyone who stood next to them. These tires weren't just for show. They were built to float the truck over snowfields so deep they would swallow ordinary vehicles whole. Imagine standing in the middle of a Siberian winter and watching this giant roll past, its wheels crushing drifts taller than a man, leaving behind a path where there was no road at all. Visually, the ZIL E-167 was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. A wide cab reinforced with steel, a chassis braced like a bridge, and 6 wheels spaced out across its elongated body. When it accelerated, it wasn't quiet about it. The roar of its V8 shook the air, and with every burst of throttle, plumes of snow exploded skyward, as if the earth itself was being torn apart. It didn't just move forward, it announced its presence with thunder. From a distance, you could hear it long before you saw it, a beast bellowing across the tundra. This truck wasn't built for comfort or convenience. It was designed for missions where failure meant death. Military expeditions, Arctic supply runs, and exploration into areas so remote they barely existed on maps. The ZIL E-167 could haul heavy loads over terrain no vehicle had ever crossed. Roads? There were none. But that was the point. This was a machine designed to make its own. In practice, it proved that humans could engineer a vehicle capable of surviving the world's most brutal winters. It wasn't just driving. It was rewriting the rulebook of what trucks could do. The true legend of the ZIL E-167 came during its brutal testing. The Soviet Union threw it into storms so violent they grounded planes and stopped entire military convoys dead in their tracks. Blizzards raged, temperatures plummeted, winds howled across the tundra. Where others froze, the ZIL kept going. Alone, it crawled through snowdrifts, shrugged off ice, and returned to base battered but unbroken. Even its engineers were shocked. They had built a machine for the Arctic, but even they hadn't imagined just how unstoppable it would prove to be. And yet, despite its astonishing performance, the ZIL E-167 never entered mass production. It remained a prototype, a one-of-a-kind monster that served as a glimpse into what was possible. But sometimes, that's enough. It became a legend, whispered about in engineering circles and remembered as the truck that proved the Arctic could be conquered on wheels. Today, it stands as a symbol of ambition, an iron beast born in an era when the limits of man and machine were pushed to the edge. And if you think the ZIL E-167 is extreme, hold on tight. Because the next machine on this list takes things even further. Bigger, heavier, and built with the single-minded goal of crushing the impossible, it shows that in the race to master snow, there was always another monster waiting to be unleashed. Nodwell 110. Back in the 1960s, venturing into the Arctic was not for the faint of heart. Few dared to attempt it, and those who did faced a land where snow swallowed trucks whole and temperatures turned steel brittle. It was here that a machine appeared, one that looked like it had rolled straight out of a dream, or a nightmare depending on who you asked. This was the Nodwell 110, a Canadian creation designed with a singular purpose, to go where ordinary vehicles could not. Engineers realized quickly that tires simply didn't work in deep snow. The solution? Tracks, just like a tank. It was a bold idea, and it changed Arctic exploration forever. At its heart, the Nodwell 110 carried a 4-cylinder inline engine, roughly 3 liters in size, producing about 140 horsepower. On paper, it didn't sound like much compared to the giants of today. But out on the frozen tundra, numbers meant little. What mattered was endurance, and this machine had plenty. Wide tracks spread its weight evenly across the snow, letting it glide where wheels would sink. Its rumble cut through the silence of the Arctic, steady and low, while behind it lay trails that looked like freshly carved roads. Small on the outside but tough inside, the Nodwell was born for the cold. It quickly became the backbone of Arctic work. Oil companies in Canada and Alaska depended on it to reach drilling points buried deep in the wilderness, places where even planes couldn't land. It became a lifeline for workers who needed tools, fuel, and supplies delivered across impossible distances. Imagine being stranded hundreds of miles from the nearest town, surrounded by endless white with no help in sight. Without this machine, many expeditions would have failed or worse. The Nodwell wasn't just transportation. It was survival, a steel guardian in one of the harshest places on Earth. Its true legend, however, was written in its longevity. At one Alaskan research station, a single Nodwell 110 went into service and stayed there for more than 30 years. 3 decades of storms, shifting ice, and relentless cold, and it never gave up. Year after year, it carried people and cargo across a landscape that destroyed lesser machines. No exaggeration, this vehicle became part of the station's identity, a symbol of loyalty and dependability in an environment where failure could cost lives. The Nodwell 110 proved something that still resonates today: when humans and machines come together with purpose, there's almost no environment we can't conquer. It wasn't flashy, and it didn't need to be. Its value was in its reliability, its simplicity, and its ability to keep moving when everything else stopped. Bigger and faster Arctic trucks would come later, but the 110 secured its place in history as one of the greatest snow machines ever built. It showed that survival in the frozen wilderness wasn't about raw power, it was about smart design, grit, and sheer determination. So the next time you see endless white snowfields or hear stories of Arctic oil exploration, remember the quiet hero that made it possible. The Nodwell 110 was more than a truck. It was freedom, resilience, and the difference between failure and survival. And if you think that's impressive, wait until you see the next snow beast on this list: an amphibious machine that once rescued stranded astronauts in the middle of a blizzard. Ural 5920. In the 1980s, deep in the Soviet Union, when the challenge was to deliver supplies to places where not even tractors could survive, engineers created a monster built for the impossible. Its name was the Ural 5920, and it was unlike anything the world had ever seen. Regular trucks would sink in snow or bog down in mud, but this machine was something else entirely. It wasn't just a truck. It was a colossus designed to carry life and industry into the frozen edges of Siberia. The Ural 5920 didn't roll on wheels. It didn't even bother pretending to be a conventional vehicle. Instead, it moved on massive articulated tracks, each one engineered to glide across snow so deep it would swallow ordinary vehicles whole. When the thaw came, and the permafrost turned into a sea of mud, the tracks didn't falter. They floated the giant forward, steady and unrelenting. It wasn't about elegance. It was about survival. At the heart of this beast sat a V8 diesel engine. 13 liters of raw mechanical muscle, producing around 300 horsepower. That number might not impress when compared to sleek highway rigs, but out here, numbers didn't matter. What mattered was torque, endurance, and the ability to drag fully loaded cargo across frozen rivers, broken ice, and endless miles of wilderness. The Ural wasn't built for speed, it was built for brute force. And brute force was exactly what it delivered. Looking at it, you knew instantly this was no ordinary truck. The tall cab perched above the tracks, giving drivers a commanding view of the desolate tundra ahead. Behind it stretched a long articulated body, a second-tracked unit that gave the whole machine the appearance of a military convoy fused into one. Its articulation wasn't just for looks, it gave the Ural a surprising grace. For all its bulk, it could bend and twist its way through tight corners and unpredictable terrain, moving like a giant steel serpent across the snow. And then there was the sound. The engine didn't purr or hum. It roared. A heavy, relentless growl that made the ground tremble as it advanced. You could hear it long before you saw it. The low thunder of the diesel carried through icy winds, and when it arrived, its enormous tracks crushed everything beneath them, leaving behind a trail carved into the wilderness. For remote outposts waiting for fuel, food, or construction materials, that sound wasn't frightening, it was salvation. In practice, the Ural 5920 became indispensable. It hauled oil rigs into untouched fields. It delivered fuel drums and mobile shelters to Arctic bases. It carried construction supplies across swamps, rivers, and frozen ground where no road would ever exist. Workers relied on it because no other vehicle could match it. Helicopters could only bring so much. Planes could only land where there was a strip. But the Ural? It went anywhere. Through blizzards, over cracked ice, across rivers that looked ready to swallow it whole. Nothing stopped it. Even more impressive, many of these giants are still out there today. Decades after they first rolled out of Soviet factories, you can find Ural 5920s working in remote Russian outposts, still pushing forward as if time itself had no effect. They remain a reminder of what can be achieved when human determination meets extreme engineering. A machine built not for comfort, not for speed, but for one purpose, to conquer the places the world thought were unconquerable. And if you think the Ural 5920 is big, hold on tight. Because the next machine in this journey makes even this steel monster look small. It's so massive, so powerful, that it seems built to climb snow-covered mountains without ever stopping. ZL 4906. In the 1980s, when the Soviet Union was at its peak, a machine rolled out that looked like it belonged to another world. It wasn't built for city streets or farm fields, and it certainly wasn't designed for comfort. The ZIL 4906 had a single purpose: to go where practically nothing else could. Across endless snowfields, over frozen rivers, through unmapped wilderness, this monster was the last line of hope when lives were on the line. Imagine the coldest corners of Siberia, where even compasses can fail and winter swallows the horizon. That's where this truck came alive. At its core was a massive 7-liter V8 engine pumping out around 180 horsepower. Not a staggering number by today's standards, but combined with its unique design, it was more than enough to carry it into the unknown. The real secret wasn't under the hood, it was under the chassis. The ZIL 4906 rode on gigantic low-pressure tires so wide and soft that they spread its weight across the snow like a footprint in powder. Instead of sinking, it floated. From a distance, it looked as if this beast was gliding across pillows of white, almost weightless despite its size. It was a truck that defied logic, a creation that turned impassable terrain into its personal highway. Its appearance was just as striking. Long, with a high-mounted cab that gave its driver a commanding view, the ZIL 4906 had the aura of a military vehicle ready to conquer the North Pole. Its lines were harsh and purposeful, built for survival rather than beauty, yet there was something mesmerizing about its shape. When the engine roared to life, a deep growl echoed across the frozen plains, rolling through valleys of snow like thunder. Villages in the distance would hear it long before they saw it. This wasn't just a truck, it was a force of nature. But the ZIL wasn't just about looks or power, it had a mission. Its true role was in search and rescue. In the Soviet Union's space program, when Soyuz capsules returned from orbit, they didn't always land where planned. Sometimes they came down in the middle of frozen wilderness, miles away from civilization. In those critical hours, when cosmonauts sat shivering in their tiny capsules, one machine was trusted to bring them home, the ZIL 4906. Through blizzards, across frozen lakes, and over snowdrifts higher than a man, it pushed forward without hesitation. It didn't matter if rivers had turned to sheets of ice or if the wind howled like wolves across the steppe. The ZIL never stopped. There's one story, little known outside of Russia, that captures just how vital this machine was. During a rescue mission in brutal winter conditions, a Soyuz capsule landed far off course. Dozens of rescue vehicles tried to make their way toward it, but one by one, they failed. Engines froze, tracks broke, wheels dug into the snow. In the end, only a single ZIL 4906 reached the exact landing site. That truck became the difference between a successful recovery and a potential tragedy. Any other vehicle would have sunk, stalled, or shattered against the ice long before arriving. But the ZIL kept going, proving its worth in the harshest test imaginable. For decades, it carried out this duty, quietly building its reputation as a savior on wheels. It wasn't a machine for showrooms or parades, it was a lifeline designed to operate where no road existed. The Soviet engineers behind it weren't chasing style or luxury. They were chasing survival, and they succeeded. The ZIL 4906 stands today as one of the most impressive snow machines ever built, a blend of raw Soviet engineering and unstoppable determination. And here's the thing, we're only just getting started. If this truck already blows your mind, wait until you see what's coming next. A Russian giant built to tackle snow so deep, even today's drivers would think twice before stepping on the gas. From the daring Arctic machines of the 1960s to the Soviet-built giants of frozen battlefields, and finally, the Antarctic colossus, the Kress AHT-730C, we've witnessed the greatest snow conquerors ever built. These aren't simple trucks. They're steel warriors that make survival, exploration, and progress possible in lands where nature shows no mercy. Now we want to hear from you. Which one would you brave the ice with? And which left you in awe just imagining its roar in the cold silence? Smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell, because every week we bring you the untold stories of machines that dominate the world's harshest frontiers. Until next time, keep exploring.